Father Yoko, I'm very happy to finally have had the opportunity to steal you from your busy schedule. Father Yuriy Kolasa, one of the earliest graduates of the ITI. It's a great honor to be speaking with you today in our series Ad Fontes, in which I speak with alumni of the ITI from around the world with the most different of vocations they followed. And Father Yurko, we are very eager to hear from you today. And my first question to you is, you are from the Ukraine, so how did you find out about the ITI and in what year was that?
Thank you very much. So it's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to share about my experience of the time at the ITI. So it was 1996. It was, in fact,
the first year that the ITI was founded, actually, the founding year.
It was May 1996 that while I was a member of the Student Catholic organization in Ukraine, in the Western Ukraine, in Lviv, we have received the news that there is a new school, Theological school, opening in Austria, and that there are several scholarships. And that news has been passed to us from the Archdiocese, from the office of the Archbishop at that time, to the Student Catholic organization, whether someone has an interest. And I was the first one who raised my hand to use this opportunity to go and study theology, because at that time, it's only 5 years after the Soviet Union collapsed, and there were not many possibilities.
It must have been sensational for you. I mean, after communism and the Soviet Union, to suddenly be given this opportunity.
Yeah, that was, it was a very overwhelming news. And so I have submitted my request to the Archbishop, and so he has given his permission that I would be. So there were 7 students at that time that came from Ukraine to the ITI in this year 1996.
And can you tell me again the story, which I personally am always very deeply impressed about the person who gave you the scholarship, Judge William Clark, also known as Bill Clark, who used to be the National Security Advisor of Ronald Reagan and his chief of staff when he was governor of California, and later he was, after being National Security Advisor, he was also the Secretary of the Interior, so really a very senior political figure in the United States. He was a good friend of mine later when he became a member of the board of the ITI, and I had the opportunity to get to know him very well. And I was also present many years after 1996 when you were, so to say, reunited with Bill Clark on his ranch in California. So can you tell us a little bit about the story and the background, how you came to discover this and what this meant for you?
It was, so I was already in Austria at that time. The ITI started, and towards already the Christmas break, so we have been given a certain notice that financially the situation is not very promising for the next year, so it might be that the ITI will have to cut down the number of students very significantly.
And this was in the beginning of the academic year 1996-97?
So
okay.
It was 1996, 1997, and so it was the time when we were not sure how it will all develop, and it was, so we started to pray. The students organized themselves and started to pray novena to Saint Therese. And then it was in October, so on the 1st of October, that we have received the news that there is a person who will help the ITI to bridge these financial difficulties. So this person eventually arrived to Austria at the invitation of our Grand Chancellor, of Cardinal Schönborn, and that was Judge Clark. And so he was introduced, so we met with him in the Magna Aula at that time in Gaming. All the students gathered, and we started to share our stories. Simply, at that time, His Eminence just asked the students if you would be so kind to tell your stories and why it is important for you to study at the ITI. And so several students, one after the other, stood up and told why it is important for them that the ITI continues. And then he listened to that. He was introduced to us, Judge Clark, the security advisor to President Reagan. So from that very first moment, that struck me, because so growing up in Soviet Ukraine at that time, a security advisor to the President Reagan was the most evil figure at that time that one could have imagined, the time of Cold War. And just seeing him there, and I had to somehow process this whole situation to myself, because for so many years I was deprived of this opportunity to study theology. And now I was looking at a person who in my childhood in the schools or in different circumstances was presented to us as an embodiment of evil. Now he gives me the opportunity to do what I have been deprived by the Communist Party that tried to convince me that it is evil West that tries to corrupt or tries to destroy the Soviet Union. So this contrast was very powerful, and also it was very personal, because I looked at Judge Clark, who was in person present there, the security advisor, who said these words. He said, "Young people, I don't want you to worry about any financial difficulties. I see you're eager, and I would like to provide this opportunity for you to study." So I have been one of the students who then later on was supported by Judge Clark during my studies at the ITI. So I'm very grateful to him for that.
Well, it's a remarkable story that every time I hear it, I'm deeply moved by it, because the contrast, that you describe, this historical contrast, you growing up in the Soviet Union, being told of the evil West and this evil person who's the national security advisor to Reagan, and then that person, of all people, finally being the one who allows you to study theology and to become a priest. That's just an absolutely remarkable thing. And in fact, you are a priest. You're a priest of the Byzantine Rite of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and your church has suffered tremendously throughout the Soviet times. So again, the historical significance of Bill Clark being the person who provided your scholarship is something of enormous importance, because it shows how God works through history to redeem us also. And in your way, your story is a very specific and a very impressive one, how this redemption through history actually happens. So thank you for sharing that. And that brings me to my second question. We are sitting here in a prayer room in Trumau for our Byzantine Rite students and clergy. And you are, as I just said, you're yourself an ordained priest in the Byzantine Rite of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. If you look back at your years of studying theology at the ITI, what would you say would be the most important lesson you take from those years? Of course, there's a lot you learned, and you received this wonderful formation. But if you could bring it back to one specific thing that you say that really was the most important that I look back on those years, what would that be?
I would say that, as I mentioned already, when I came to Austria, when I came to the ITI, it was 5 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. And that what struck me the most when I arrived to the ITI, that I have experienced freedom. Freedom in many different respects, but one very important aspect of that freedom was freedom to seek the truth. That freedom to seek the truth and in a way also freedom to make that truth your own. I realized the more you contemplate the truth, the more it becomes your own. And from that, you hold on to it. And the more you hold on to it, then it gives you the strength to bear witness to it. In the classroom to defend the truth, but going out into the world to bear witness to the truth. So after I finished my master's studies at the ITI, I returned back to Ukraine, and it is this very experience that gave me the strength to tell the truth to the young people. So I was put by my ecclesial authority in charge of the Commission for Marriage and Family, and I was very happy that I had this opportunity to witness to the truth, to tell the young people, and there were thousands of young people, the truth about God, the truth about love, the truth about man, the truth about human person, the truth about marriage. So that's the fruit of my first experience when I arrived to the ITI. Freedom to seek the truth, hold on to it, and behold it, contemplate it.
And freedom and truth were obviously two things that were not very much in supply in your youth as you grew up in the Soviet Union. So it must have been in many ways a life-transforming experience for you also to be in an environment with students from so many different countries and from so many different cultures, and together with them to contemplate in freedom the truth. Must have been such a remarkable experience. I have to say
it was so powerful but so unusual to me. It took me several months to understand that I don't have to apologize to my professors or to my colleagues whenever I try to express my own understanding. And sometimes I would contradict my professor, and then after the class I would come and say, please forgive me, I didn't mean to contradict you. And it took me a long time to understand that I don't have to apologize, because we together are on this journey of searching and seeking the truth. And so I'm very grateful that also for this experience that the ITI, on this journey you are accompanied first of all by the saints, by great masters, but also by your professors who walk with you together on this journey of going towards experiencing, encountering the truth.
Now let's talk a little bit about where you are now today, because that is in itself also remarkable. You have in fact, after your ministry in the Ukraine, when you finished your studies here at the ITI, you have actually returned to the ITI. You have done your licentiate studies, and then the Archbishop of Vienna, Cardinal Schönborn, asked you to take over a very important position here in the Archdiocese. Could you probably tell a little bit more about that, what you are doing today?
So maybe this is another aspect of my experience at the ITI. When I arrived, I also encountered the richness of the liturgical life at the ITI. I encountered different rites, different churches, and with the time, also at the ITI, we have established a formation program for priests and seminarians that are coming to study at the ITI from different countries, different traditions, different churches. And in the course of time, in this formation program, we tried to develop unity in diversity. So we had priests and seminarians, as I said, from different rites and different churches, but we would come and we would pray together. We would have our formation courses together, and we realized that how much we complement each other, and we all experience the great richness of the Church. And we tried to live that out also in our daily life. In 2011, the Archbishop was looking for a Vicar General for the Eastern Rite Catholics, because in Austria, the Archbishop of Vienna is also ordinary for the Eastern Rite Catholics in this country, in Austria. I cannot say for certain that that's the main reason, but when I tried to understand why he made this choice, that he has called me to this office, I can attribute it to this shared life here at the ITI of different churches and different traditions, because this is something that he wanted to expand on the life of the ordinariate, so of this ordinariate for the Eastern Catholic churches. It was always on his heart that he wanted to foster the unity of the Catholic Church in diversity, so that every church has her own place, can develop her own tradition, that the faithful of this church can be served, that their liturgical spiritual needs can be addressed, but still that there is unity, that there is a shared life. And so since 2011, with great honor, I have received this call to step into the office of the Vicar General of the Archbishop of Vienna for the Eastern Catholics in Austria. And looking back now for the past 9 years, I can say that we were able to realize this
vision
of the Archbishop, of our ordinary Cardinal Schönborn. That now we have different churches in Austria presented, and for example, we try to foster this shared life and union among priests, also among faithful, and it has brought many fruits.
It's very beautiful testimony to hear that, because who would have thought in May 1996, when your bishop in the Catholic Students Association announced these places here in Austria for studying theology 5 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, and who would have thought that so many years later you're serving the Church in this role as Vicar General. I think that's a remarkable story of how God works and how He makes use of our talents. And it's exactly to those talents that my my final question to you today relates, and that is, what would you advise young Catholics, young Christians who are either just starting their studies or are contemplating what to do after finishing their studies as they look into the world with all its challenges and with all its confusion and with all its many good things as well? Exactly, also looking at their talents, of course, that they have been working on. What would your advice be to a young Catholic who's set and ready to go into the world?
I would say that many young Catholics today enjoy what we have been deprived when we were young in the Soviet Union. They enjoy freedom. And I would like to tell to the young people today, do not take it for granted. Do not take it for granted, the freedom that you have. And I would like to encourage all of the young people, all of the young Catholics, use that freedom to seek the truth. Use that freedom to seek greater things, to desire greater things, to desire excellency, because it will transform your life as it did transform my personal life. So this I would very much wish for all of the young Catholics, all of the young people. Desire great things. Use your freedom to seek the truth, and this will set you free.
In the words of the great Saint John Paul II, who's also the founder of the ITI, and of course was very importantly co-responsible for the fall of the Iron Curtain and the fall of communism in Central and Eastern Europe. And he said it once in the World Youth Day, I think it was the World Youth Day in Denver. He said with a strong voice to the youth, don't settle for mediocrity. Don't settle for mediocrity. Yeah? As you say, desire great things and don't take your freedom for granted, and aim high, but don't go for mediocrity. Well, Father, you are certainly an example of a graduate of the ITI who has not settled for mediocrity, and we are very proud of that, and thank you very much for taking the time today to share your unique and, I would say, compelling and really moving story of coming to the ITI and then going back into the world and serving it for bringing it good. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.